Hey everyone, we all think we've got a handle on good debt versus bad debt, right? But what if I told you that one of the most famous examples of so-called bad debt is way more complicated than it looks? Today we're going to dive into the surprising truth behind payday loans. Okay, so let's start with the basics. The standard thinking, from places like US Bank is pretty simple. Good debt is an investment. Think a mortgage for a house that's going to grow in value, or a student loan that helps you earn more down the road. Bad debt? Well, that's for stuff that you use up or that loses value, like a monster credit card bill.
And by that definition, payday loans look like the ultimate bad guy in the story. I mean, they're called predatory, a debt trap. It all sounds pretty open and shut. Case closed, right? Well, not so fast.
Turns out this whole debate over high-interest loans is not new at all. It's actually a super old conflict between two big ideas. Should we protect people from making bad choices, or should we respect their freedom to choose for themselves? And this argument goes back, way back.
On one hand, you've got thinkers like Aristotle from ancient Greece. He basically said that making money from money, which he called usury, was completely unnatural and just plain wrong.
But then you fast forward a couple thousand years, and you get a philosopher like Jeremy Bentham, who comes along and says, hang on a second. He argued that if you're an adult, you're in your right mind, and you know what you're doing, no one should stop you from getting money how you see fit, even if other people think it's a terrible idea.
And make no mistake, the stakes here are incredibly high. The typical annual percentage rate, or APR, on a 2-week payday loan is 391%. Yeah, you heard that right. That number is just staggering, and it's really at the heart of why this is such a huge debate.
So, this whole thing really boils down to one critical question. Are the people taking out these loans being tricked? Are they naive victims falling into a trap they didn't see? Or are they totally aware of the risks and are simply making what they believe is their best or maybe even their only choice in a tough spot? The answer really changes everything.
So, how do you even figure out what's going on inside a borrower's head? Well, a major academic study set out to do just that. But before they talked to a single borrower, they did something really interesting. They went to the experts, 103 financial pros, and asked them what they thought borrowers were thinking.
And just look at this. The experts were almost unanimous. Nearly 8 out of 10 of them were convinced that borrowers were just being wildly optimistic. They thought people had no idea how likely they were to get stuck borrowing again and again. Basically, they thought the average borrower was walking into this completely blind. Okay, so that's what the so-called experts believed. But what happened when the researchers went straight to the source? When they walked into the payday loan stores and asked the borrowers to predict their own future?
And this is where the story completely flips on its head. The experts, they guessed borrowers would think there was only a 40% chance they'd have to borrow again. But the borrowers themselves? They predicted a 70% chance. And what actually happened? A 74% reborrowing rate. The experts weren't just a little bit off, they were dead wrong. The borrowers, on the other hand, they knew exactly what they were getting into.
I mean, this is the big, stunning takeaway from all the data. The people taking out these loans are not naive. For the most part, they are painfully aware of just how likely it is they'll get stuck in that cycle of borrowing. They know the deal.
And it gets even more interesting when you dig into the data. See, brand new borrowers are a little too optimistic. They underestimate their chances of borrowing again by about 20 percentage points. But check this out. They learn incredibly fast. After just 4 loans, their predictions become almost perfect. Experience really is the best teacher here.
So, if it isn't ignorance, what's really going on here? The answer might be something called present focus. It's this deeply human thing where we tend to value what we need right now way more than what's good for us in the long run. It's why you might order that expensive pizza tonight, even though you know your future self wishes you'd save the money.
And here's the thing. The study found that borrowers are totally aware of this internal battle. Over half of them, 54%, said they would very much want some extra motivation to help them avoid taking out another loan. They know they have this bias, and they actually wish they had a tool to fight against it. Now, this self-awareness, it has huge consequences for how we should handle this stuff from a policy perspective. If borrowers aren't naive victims being tricked, then how should we think about the rules and regulations for these loans? So the knee-jerk reaction for a lot of people is just ban them, get rid of them, right? Well, here's the kicker. When the researchers modeled the financial impact, an outright ban, the most popular idea out there, actually made borrowers worse off. It seems like taking away this flawed option also takes away what many people see as their only lifeline in an emergency.
Okay, so let's put all these pieces together. If that old story of the debt trap isn't quite right, what does the real trap actually look like?
So think about how we got here. We started with this simple black and white idea that payday loans are just bad. Then we saw that it's really this ancient tug of war between freedom and protection. But the real twist was the data. Borrowers get it. They understand the risks. And that leads us to a totally different conclusion. The real trap might not be a trap of ignorance. It might be a trap of awareness, a conscious human struggle with that present focus that gets all of us sometimes. And that leaves us with a much, much harder question. If people fully understand the costs, if they can accurately predict their own behavior, and they still choose these loans to fix a crisis, what is the right way to help? How do you protect them without taking away the freedom to make what they see as their only available choice? Now that's a tough question and one worth really thinking about. Thanks for tuning in.